Age of Mythology Retold is out, and it's actually pretty good. This game's campaign is great, but not everything is the same as the original, so here is a series of quick tips for every mission of all 3 campaigns so you can slap Gargarensis silly. This video is targeted for people playing on hard difficulty and below. The Titan difficulty in this remaster is one of the most brutally grindy RTS campaigns I have ever seen. It is not designed as your first playthrough. A lot has changed in this remaster, so hopefully these tips will help you get into one of the best RTS campaigns of all time. Let's begin! The first mission is Omens, where we learn to move and make units and then defend against 6 waves of pirate attacks. The mission does a pretty good job of introducing you to the game and telling you what to do, but there is some extra info I can give. First off, the hotkeys and menu options. Yeah, we're starting off with the exciting stuff. There are like a billion options in this game, and I'm sure that there's a good setup for everybody, but currently things like capturing the mouse cursor are not on by default and are going to need some tuning. The game uses a grid system for hotkeys, but for some reason to stop your units you have to hit Alt and Z, so you're probably going to have to figure that out as well. Once you've gotten into the mission itself, focus on watching the minimap to intercept the pirates as they come. There's not a big threat on this mission as long as they're dealt with fairly quickly. All human units in Age of Mythology require gold to train, so you're going to need a lot of it. On this mission, you can't actually build more villagers, so taking a couple off of food and doing some mining is great. You can also right-click on a unit portrait on a production structure to auto-build them. This helps with army creation a ton. For this mission, a mix of hoplites and toxotes is fine. Myth units like the Kraken can't use their special abilities on heroes like Arcantos, so he can tank while the archers shoot. Formations in Age of Mythology will reduce all unit speed to the slowest unit in the group. So once you get siege weapons, it's useful to have them on their own control group. It's a little bit more management, but dramatically increases the rest of your unit's move speed. Also, don't build towers on this mission. The enemies hit way too many areas for them to be good. Next up is Consequences, where we learn to build an army and then smash through a defending enemy base. This is the first real macro mission of the game, and where you should learn the 3 W's of Age of Mythology: workers, walls, and wandering. Focus on building a big economy with lots of villagers. Cut off every single choke point you can see with walls, and send your units wandering around to explore. There are tons of little benefits to find on almost every mission. For example, on the north side of the island, there's a crashed ship, and if you find it, you get a bunch of golden wood for free. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you about every little thing you can find on every map. I'd be here until next month. I'll try to highlight the game changers as we go through, but keep exploring and the benefits will add up. Another thing I won't be able to provide concrete advice on is god selection. Instead, I can just give some rough tips. Whenever you advance in age, you get to pick a god, and you get a special myth unit, a god power, and upgrades. When you're not that experienced with the game, you can kinda just ignore the unique upgrades. They do matter, but not nearly as much as the myth unit and the power. Honestly, picking whatever seems cool is the correct answer like 84% of the time. I like Ares and the Cyclops here. A few of them, some archers, and the Pestilence god power makes quick work of the defending base. And before we move on to mission number 3, I want to talk a little bit about this auto harvester mechanic. This is new to Retold. It allows you to click a preset and your villagers will properly distribute themselves amongst various resources. In theory, this is a really good idea for new players or people that are not interested in that side of the game. But as a Greek faction, you have to put your units on temples in order to get favor, and currently it just doesn't do that. So while I think it's an interesting idea in the long term, its current state is not something I can recommend at all. After Consequences is Scratching the Surface, the first dynamic mission of the campaign. This is the last time I'm going to reiterate it, but it is so good to wander around with your forces. Starting from now, relics will be on the map, and they can be picked up by heroes and stored into temples for nice passive bonuses. I have a really hard time seeing relics in Retold, so keep your eyes out. This mission has a couple different ways that you can approach it. Both of the docks are defended by decent enemy defenses. If you go in with a tiny army and no siege weapons, it's going to be a bloodbath. Try to always have some form of crushing damage in your army so that you can deal with buildings quickly. As you work your way through the enemy base, make sure to be ready to pull back at a moment's notice. The Retold AI loves to counterattack, and it is really freaking obnoxious. Fortunately, this map is very small, but it will constantly be a thorn in your side. Once you've dealt with one of the 2 docks, Agamemnon's forces land and you're instantly promoted to Death Machine and can roll over the rest of the mission with ease. With those tips, you should be able to beat the land version of the mission. However, if you're feeling exceptionally lazy, you can just tech up to the 3rd age, build some docks and get like 4 Skyla, and then the AI just flat out loses because they don't know how to fight a naval war yet. The next mission is a fine plan, where the Trojan walls must be breached, but we're millennials, so we're poor and we have no gold. This mission is a big difficulty spike, so be careful, please. You know how I worry. There are a lot of different options to deal with the gold problem from the get-go, but my solution is 2 birds with 1 stone. Head over to one of your 2 docks and grab a transport ship, and then load your 7-ish workers into it and ferry them over to this island with a gold mine on it. This mission has 2 different opponents on it, the main antagonist and a secondary base that is connected to you by water and land. These guys will harass your workers on the island. But if you build up a nice fleet of siege ships, you can just walk over them, destroy their docks, and now you have a bunch of fish that you can harvest in this lake as well as the gold on the island. Win-win. But that gold isn't infinite, so here are a list of ways that you can continue your income afterwards. Raiding the enemy mines gives you a lump sum of gold when the camps are raised, as well as having gold mines there that you can mine. There's a relic in the pink player's base that you can nab for a trickle of income permanently. You can buy and sell resources at the market, and you can use the market to make donkey caravans, which I'll talk more about in the next mission. None of these sources are perfect on their own, but each helps a bit in keeping the war machine funded. I mentioned it earlier, but this mission is where the walls start to become exceptionally useful. Make sure to upgrade them and toss them down at every choke point. Them, combined with centaurs, who fortunately don't cost gold, are a great early defense. From this point on, with the majority of the missions, you're going to want to take things slow. The remastered AI is far better than the original, so you're going to have to attack with large armies, lots of myth units, and 4th tier god powers. You unlock stuff really quickly in this game, so you have a lot of options. And almost none of them are bad. Just make sure with whatever you're getting that you make a lot of them. After breaching the gates of Troy comes just enough rope where Ajax gets flanked and we have to call off the main attack. The mission starts with us grabbing Ajax's old base and gives a good time to talk about resources. All the livestock in this game, cows, pigs, goats, that sort of a thing, start off with a certain food yield and get more over time. Try to harvest berries or hunt wild animals while they plump up. And yes, they do get fatter in game. This mission has a bonus objective to the north where you can claim an enemy farming operation and use it. It isn't as insanely close to the enemies as it was during the original game, but it is still absolutely a trap. Instead, hunt to the south and then use some livestock and finish up with farms. For gold, use caravans from the market to trade with Agamemnon's command center. You can trade with any town center, even your own, and it will generate gold based on the distance between the market and destination. It is a slow but steady infinite resource. In fact, 3 out of 4 resources in Age of Mythology have infinite sources. Farms are expensive and don't give food as quickly as hunting, but are infinite. Trading caravans for gold are infinite, and praying at the temple to get favor is infinite, though it does have diminishing returns after the first 8 workers. Because of these infinite sources, investing in a good economy every mission gives you a lot of momentum that is hard to break. Retold also changes how god powers work. They used to be one-time use, but now can be recast at the cost of additional favor. This means that you can use powers early to protect yourself and turbocharge your economy, and then when you have the army that you want, you can bank favor and recast them during the death blow. To show off how strong this is, on this mission, I spammed almost entirely Myrmidons and still managed to break the enemy. The power of recasting bronze and restoration is amazing. And of course, I remembered to take the sneaky, less defended route into the enemy's base on the left side. Now that we're Myrmidon with the enemy outpost, we start the mission I hope this works, and we can get back to sieging Troy by making a giant wooden horse. This mission is really easy. It's actually a nice change of pace from the previous 2, which are pretty rough. You can use a dock to get some fishing ships while tasking villagers onto wood. Once you have 1,000 wood, all the villagers go onto the horse and keep making them with the fish food. That's it! Once the horse is completed, you get to do the good part of the mission, but you're not going to struggle here, so go nuts and blow everything up. With Troy defeated, we go back to more bandits, on the mission More Bandits, where we fight more bandits. This is a pseudo-build mission, where you have no workers and move through a map where you're occasionally given money to construct forces. Off the beaten path, there are a good number of tiny resources of cash to look out for. They make a big difference. And Hydras are great on this mission. The way that they work is that after doing a certain amount of damage, they grow an additional head, up to 5. Each of the heads besides the first deals half damage for a total of triple. If you get some early and get their healing upgrade on the temple and let them loose to grab some heads, they will become absolute units that you can ride to victory. Almost every myth unit has been buffed and retold, and these Giga Hydra are even better than you remember them being. These last 2 missions have been pretty easy, but now the game gives us bad news. A mission that makes zero logical sense if you stop to think about it for even a moment, but this is not the place for me to complain because I already made a 3.5-hour retrospective about this game, so I'm going to contain myself. We're split into two halves, which is already difficult to deal with, but with Retold's improved enemies and harder difficulty, it makes this mission a real nightmare. The main benefit we have is starting with 2 command centers. Double villager production is great, but being split up is hard. I wholeheartedly suggest worshipping Apollo for the underground passage power to connect the bases. You can beat this mission without it, but it's kind of like taking ducks from the park. Nobody is going to stop you, but do you really want to do it? You're just going to end up hurt and embarrassed. The best part of the underworld passage is that when the enemy aggression gets really tough on the left-hand side, you can just evacuate that base and play right-handed only. You can make farms for food and grab gold mines as you push forward. This mission is really just a series of grindy encounters. If you play under the idea that progress is going to be slow, retreat from strong god powers, and keep a mixed army of quality units, the enemies aren't that bad to deal with, there's just a lot of them. We're now reaching the end of the Greek portion of this campaign. These next 2 missions are no-build missions, and both are fairly straightforward. On Revelation, make sure to scout around, find all the friends, and knock down the rocks before approaching the ram. I like to use Lightning Storm on the initial defenders here to keep as many of my units alive as possible. Put your melee on the ram, ranged fights the defenders, and Chiron escorts a new group of units because he can kill the phoenixes. And, you're done! For some reason, the ram has like 10% the durability of the original version. I don't know why they did this, but what used to be a long defense mission is now a breeze. After Revelations is Strangers. This mission is like really difficult to lose, and it's a bunch of straight hallways. Make sure that the Medusae are not allowed within 50 feet of your non-hero human units, and you can basically attack move through everything else. Use shades on anybody that looks at you funny, and the mission is trivial. Once our heroes have emerged from the underworld, they meet Amonra, who is digging up the lost relic, beginning the Egyptian portion of the campaign. This mission used to be weirdly difficult, but Retold changed it up and it's a massive improvement. First off, if you haven't played Egypt before, make sure to watch the little video that explains the faction. It's pretty good. For the mission, we have a set number of villagers who must be distributed between harvesting, building, and unearthing the relic. Enemies will attack from all 3 lanes. The easiest way to approach this mission is to grab all of your workers, put them onto gold, and use prosperity god power to jumpstart your income. Then split people off between resources, and build up a big army. You can only make infantry here, so try to get a balanced mix of all 3. Once maxed, send every worker onto the relic and split up your army into 2, making sure to divvy up the heroes. And then actively engage the attacks with the vision that the game gives you, and everything should be smooth sailing. If it looks like something is going to get past, use the Shifting Sands power to intercept them. With their fancy magic sword unleashed, the gang heads to Light Sleeper, where the most deadly part of the mission is the beginning. First off, Amonra. This lady can do absolutely absurd amounts of damage with her jumps, but will end up in weird places quite often. If she jumps across gates or onto unpathable terrain, you can manually use her ability to get her back, but expect her to die more than all your other heroes combined. Once you've rescued the gold miners from servitude, there's a gauntlet of enemies on the way to your base. Be careful here. The mummy was reworked and retold and now does area damage over time that will one-shot workers. It is very easy to lose all of them in this section to a single cast and have to reset. Don't ask me how I know. Once you have your base, the macro portion starts. First off, remember to send the guys that you saved from a life of gold mining back to the same mines, and then start teching. The Egyptian barracks units are generally considered subpar because of how extreme they are with their counters. Instead, the Egyptian core comes from the mid-goal stronghold. The elephants, camels, and chariot archers are all fantastic core units. The timer of Kemset's army destroying villages is not particularly strict here. As long as there's still one remaining village, you are more than safe. The path to the Guardian is incredibly short. Once you move out, you're only going to have to fight with one enemy, but that fight will be against everything that they have. It is a tough one, but you don't need to win with a lot remaining. Whenever you're making a composition with Egypt, make sure to use a large number of priests. Their long-range anti-myth attacks are essential for this campaign. Once you've won the fight, you can bring the sword bearers to the Guardian and you're safe and sound. Or alternatively, if you're lazy, you can just get a rock and then bring the sword bearers straight over to the Guardian. Actually, you can pick up almost every mobile objective in this campaign with rocks, and there are a lot of them. It makes everything incredibly easy, but I assume this is going to get patched, so I'm not going to bring it up again. Tug of War is the legally mandated mid-2000s RTS MOBA style mission. We start off with a big base, lots of tech, and a pile of dead heroes. Because we start with so many resources, speed is king. Both camels and chariot archers from the stronghold are quick and powerful Egyptian cavalry you should be spamming out as soon as the mission begins. Dropping the serpent and mummy abilities can revive your heroes early and whittle down the initial enemy force. It's not enough to kill them, but you can grab the Osiris peace cart and make everything vulnerable enough that the first few cavalry will smash right through. Then it's just escort duty. You'll be hit by a little ambush by guys that are trying their best to figure out how to jump, and then a few more enemies get delivered by Uber Beaks, but for the most part, you've got it. We've won the Tug of War, but our main characters were sent to jail. They did not pass go, and they did not collect $200. It's now up to Amonra to jailbreak her buddies. This mission is incredibly cool if played right. Because Egypt is usually limited to only a few monuments for favor generation, when you get a ton of them, things get out of hand quickly, letting you spam the best unit in the game, the pet Sobek. Ladies and gentlemen, that is correct. They listened to the unhinged 4 a.m. rant that I wrote in that retrospective, and they completely changed Hathor into Sobek. I am so proud. So get ready to rock with your croc, because it's time for their heads to shine. The most important part of this mission is to make sure that you quickly rescue as many monuments as possible. If they're not blue, they're not yours. You have to move Amonra herself very close to capture them. There's a bonus objective to attack the enemy base to draw their forces away from the defending transport ship. But honestly, I think that objective is harder than just dealing with the defenders themselves. The anti-myth unit spam on that hill is ridiculous. Because you have so much favor, you can spam the prosperity power over and over, turbocharging your economy. Using the Pharaoh to empower the delivery point for the gold also gives you a 20% bonus, giving you even more pet Sobeks you can get. And then the Eclipse power buffs myth units for a really long time and is not that expensive, so you can use it for every major battle. Once you've defeated the defenders and claimed the transport, the mission is not over. This is a big change from the original. The enemy fleet here is pretty imposing, and Amonra is going to need to build an actual armada. Fortunately, the Leviathan is fantastic, and you can use the Ancestors' power on the sea to get a ghost army. Beat them back with Eclipse as you defend at home with your pet Sobeks, and things should be fine. Now that we've been jailbroken, it's time for Let's Go, an absolutely enormous macro mission. The best way to approach this mission is to break it down into chunks. There's more or less 4 different goals that you want to achieve after getting your base. You want to destroy the lighthouse to stop enemy pirate raids, you want to destroy the enemy base that's nearby, eliminate Kemset's harbors to stop his naval attacks, and finally make landfall on the main continent and claim the Osiris cart and then escape. The key is to open a strategy that does 2 of these in very quick succession. The pirate's lighthouse is a good starting point. Either focus on building a ground army to beat back the adjacent enemy base and then move up to the lighthouse, or build a naval force and move directly to it. You can then use that fleet to attack Kemset's docks. In this playthrough, I went for the naval option, but both strategies work. If you win the sea war, you're rewarded with a ton of fishing spots to build a ground army and finish the nearby base. And if you destroy the base, you have more control over wood and gold, which puts you in a good naval position. So the order you go for is really about personal preference. There is a timer for the Osiris cart being moved around, but it's really a fake pressure to stress you out. In reality, it doesn't matter much. This is a long and grindy mission, and by the time you've invaded the main island, you're basically able to easily rescue it from anywhere. So make sure to take a few villagers and build infrastructure on their island. Constantly transporting back and forth is way too much of a hassle. Arcantos is tuckered out from his life of crime and decides to take a nap, so it's time for a dream sequence. This mission has 3 parts to it. In part 1, just do what Athena says. In part 2, you have to slap some rocks, and it features a bunch of really rude enemies that spawn right on top of you, and they blend. Knowing the spawn pattern helps a ton here. When you first hit the rocks, they spawn Avengers on the left and right who, they like to look at the rocks. Around the time that the Avengers die, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson from The Mummy 2 spawns in from the right-hand side and has some Hydras in the back. And after that, you're safe. Part 3 starts with a naval landing, taking a base, and then making stuff. This is the only time you get to play Hades in the campaign, so it's the only time you have access to— oh no, they changed the name. The Gastrofitoros, I think? The long crossbow boy that does 1 billion damage per shot. They're really good and you can spam them and win. I was gonna be all clever and try to suggest a naval strategy on this mission that I came up with before Retold launched. I don't recommend it, it didn't go well. But if you do decide to be cheeky, there is a capturable Vault of Plenty up this hill. Also, the Pestilence power gives you vision in a huge area, which makes targeting earthquakes super easy. The AI revolution in Retold has caused a couple of missions to just go absolutely bonkers in terms of difficulty. Guess why I'm telling you this right now? The Jackal's stronghold is a mission where you're probably going to be far more successful on your second go around. Amonra and co. rescue some villagers from servitude. She can then go around and explore, finding more relics and villagers that will join her cause. Your enemy Kemset is on an island fortress and cannot be reached easily. There is just far too much to rescue on this island. I cannot give you a good recommendation past explore a lot, and if you do lose, you'll know what to look for very quickly the second time around to make things easier. And losing is very easy. This landmass is gigantic, and Kemset sends some pretty nasty attacks that are difficult to deal with. There's a good chance you're going to have to run a real long way, and he's going to do some damage while you try to get there. And unlike the base game, his naval raids are absolutely cracked. As far as I'm concerned, winning the naval battle ASAP is non-negotiable here. Use leviathans, turtles, and ships to raise every dock he has. It's far more expensive to try to defend everywhere on the giant landmass than it is to take the fight to him. And this is another mission where you absolutely want to land workers on his base and produce. I made the big mistake of going for infantry play here, but his production is out of control. You want to get priests, catapults, and either camels or elephants, and it'll work out significantly better than what I did. Learn from my mistakes, I beg of you. A Long Way Home is the next mission and is the third big macro doozy in a row. A river bisects the map, and on the left-hand side, it should be used as a natural barrier in tandem with walls to stay safe. And while you're over there, you might as well pop up a second town center to quickly get some economy going. The enemy here is pretty darn relentless, and you're going to need a very solid army and economy before you can even consider stabilizing and taking the tree. As long as you take things slow and defensive here, you can move onto the tree with a big army and get a boatload of workers chopping on it simultaneously. With a full surround on the tree, it takes about 3 minutes of constant work to finish it off, and the enemy will not let you have it without a fight. While Chiron was busy chopping wood, Arcantos and co. are going after the Pirate King Kamos in Watch That First Step. This mission is pretty simple compared to the last few you've played. After grabbing the boat and crossing to the new base, the only real thing you need to worry about is how you're going to get back onto that first island that's covered in resources. The most simple way is to make a navy and smash through the blockade. That's what I did in my playthrough, and it worked great. But you do have a few other options. You can make a rock and use it to air transit to avoid the towers and ships entirely. You can grab a bunch of villagers right before the timer runs out and send them over as your only batch, or you can do a strategy that's unique to Retold. When you try to build a town center but aren't targeting a settlement, you can now make a village center, which doesn't give additional population but can make workers and collect resources. So you can float a single worker over there, pop one of these new structures down, and build up on the island. Once you have a stable economy, Kamos's forces kind of feel sad compared to what you've been dealing with, so take the reprieve and go smashing. The final Egyptian mission is where they belong, where we must bring all 4 Osiris carts to the temple. This is another one where we're split into multiple separated bases, and this time there's a soft time limit with Kemset opening an underworld passage. But the time limit's like 40 minutes, and at this point you've been so battle hardened by the earlier missions that it just will not matter. But this time, it's only a shoddy tree line that separates your bases. Tear it down ASAP for unified defense and your life will be far easier. And if you keep clearing trees down to the south, there's also a fantastic source of food in this giraffe sanctuary. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to tell you about this mission. It's not an easy win by any means, but it's one of those that just exists to check your skills as a player. If you use what you've learned in the long string of macro grinds, such as focusing on the mid-goal stronghold units, making sure to have some siege weapons, playing it slow on defense, and remembering to fold in priests, you should be able to slowly but comfortably progress to victory. Where They Belong is a fun little inner of a mission where Ajax and Arcantos are turned into pigs and need to rescue their friends and get their little bacon butts to a temple to be restored. The first portion of the mission, where the boar buddies raid the farms, is straightforward, but for some reason the villagers are bloodlusted in this version and will give their lives to shank your buddies. Keep the non-combat pigs in a safe location. Once you've reached the temple, head north and there's a nice little base area you can grab. This was added for this campaign, and it's just a great feature because the previous one was completely exposed. In fact, the enemy has a great series of walls that you can take full advantage of with a little bit of renovation. Once you're built up, the mission gets a bit weird because the enemy base is like half a step away from yours. I was sort of hoping that they would make the remastered boss fight with Circe something that was actually interesting, but she still has a devastating allergy to lightning bolts. With Greece and Egypt done, it's time for the Norse campaign. Where Greece is largely an introduction to the game and Egypt is a series of very grindy missions, the Norse favor aggression, and as a result, their missions are often a blitz. The first mission north is the traditional how do you play this faction mission, and there's really only one main mechanic. Our forces are separated and we need to reunite and build up. There are a lot of settlements to pick from, and I don't think any of them are specifically bad, but I advise the one on the far west where Arcanto spawns. It both has a variety of resources and is safe, the perfect position to get accustomed to the Norse tech tree. Being the faction's first mission, you can kind of make anything here, though if you're an Age of Mythology veteran, it might be good to foreset your sights on the troll. This guy was a meme in the original, one of the worst units in the game, but they gave him a big glow up in Retold, with one of the most elegant weapons imaginable, a giant rock. The actual army that you need in order to claim the temples is not particularly big, and the order doesn't matter that much either, though the top is generally the best defended. Next is the Dwarven Forge, where we meet some dwarves and secure their forge. I know I just said that Norse missions are fast, but this is one of the exceptions. The second mission for this faction is a giant macro game where you get all the way to the Mythic Age, which is sort of crazy. If you're feeling really cheeky about the new system of reusable god powers, you can cheese this mission in a really dumb way. Each entrance is about 1 gold mine wide, and Thor can spawn multiple gold mines now, and the enemy sends mostly giants who are just too thick to fit through. I was just testing things about this in my playthrough, so I decided to leave one route open to funnel attacks, but in theory you could wall all 3 and build up a maxed army with ease. Whether you decide to do this or not, you do want a lot of anti-myth firepower here. We're at the point where enemy attacks are more myth than man, and it can really hurt if you're unprepared. Once you have a good army and move to the forge, it will start a 12-minute time defense that is chaotic. Make sure to get the upgrades from the forges, because one gives a 4 times damage modifier to your human units against myths, making these guys into absolute monsters. And if you're feeling a bit cheeky, destroying the base in the north actually triggers an early victory here. Not from around here is the mission where we meet our new friend Skolt. This mission is crazy fast, so be ready to rush. After attacking up to the center of the map, we find some rocks and a base. The goal is to destroy the rocks, who regenerate quickly, so you need siege units. The most accessible siege unit by far is the Mountain Giant. Get 3 and have them all attack the same section. More than 3 can't hit, so don't bother. The only enemy units that attack on this mission are giants, so continue that anti-myth train for defense until the rocks are broken. And then, the gods will freeze the river as you try to escape so our forces can pass. This wasn't in the base game? What is up with RTS remasters retconning river freezing where it wasn't necessary at all? What an incredibly specific trend that they're setting. Welcoming Committee is the easiest and fastest mission in the game. You walk your flag bearer to the front of the enemy base, click on the enemy hero, get their army, repeat this 3 times. This mission in the base game had some funky triggers that made it a bit annoying to get everybody out, but everything works so smoothly on the remaster that it literally takes only 3 or so minutes to win. The only hard part is picking out the hero from the blob of enemies. Union is a fun mission. The heroes venture through a series of Norse clans, fulfilling their requests so that they will join you. It's a straightforward mission overall, so I'm not going to patronize you by reading through the objectives to pad the runtime of this video. What I will warn you about is the crazy counterattacks that they now use. Naval giant raids can tear through an unprepared base. Their crushing damage means towers are not nearly enough on their own. A small contingent of units is required. The runback time is quite long, meaning that unpreparedness can easily result in a dead base. If you cross your T's, dot your I's, and lowercase j's, everything will be fine. The Well of Urd is another big macro mission with lots of enemies that swing in from a variety of angles. Nord walls are far worse than their Greek or Egyptian counterparts, making defense a little bit tougher here. So I'm going to sound a little bit insane when I say that you want to make a lot of these walls here. The size and frequency of attacks at this point in the campaign means that you need to slow them down with fortifications so that your army can arrive and engage without losing workers. The walls will die, but that's fine. Traditional walls are kind of like a suit of armor, designed to prevent damage. But the Norse ability to rapidly reconstruct with their combat units means that their walls act more like a helmet. They're designed to crumple and be destroyed in order to soften the blow against your squishy villager interior. As long as you're diligent about rebuilding, it works really well. Despite this feeling like a defense mission, the main objective is actually to reach the Well of Urd, making this an excellent mission for the Ragnarok power, which turns all of your villagers and dwarves into heroic warriors. You just hold on until your economy is fantastic, build a big, well-upgraded army of your choice, and when you're ready to strike, it's time to use that Ragnarok and just roll over Gargarensis' base. With the wells secured, it's time to destroy another ram, but there's always a twist. This is a split mission, where on the left side of the map, we build up from scratch against an AI opponent, and on the right side, an underground dungeon that can be accessed by sending units through the well. The weird thing is that instead of having a standard campaign opponent on the left build side, it's basically the skirmish AI. They start out with next to nothing and are not prepared to deal with the power of campaign factions. You just have too many heroes. Inside the well, there are a significant number of defenders that are going to need a decent army to defeat, so any sort of timing on the left-hand side within the first 15 minutes or so should be enough to break the skirmish player in half and have more than enough time to deal with the ram. Trying to stop the ram again, it's time to go to... In my notes, I just wrote down this mission's name as the Hammer Mission. That can't be right. Unlikely Heroes, here we go. This one is pretty quick, but not necessarily easy. Every 650 gold that you mine gets sent to the surface in exchange for reinforcements. Focus on mining out the starting mine as well as your god power mine, and then go for the taproot. It's faster that way. You get dwarves on this part as reinforcements, meaning going straight for the taproot leaves you with less army and a slower objective. Once Eitri spawns on the top, things start getting rough. A series of chaser waves will go after him, and the blockade that he has to get through is very strong. I ended up playing this mission 3 times, and the only way I was able to keep Eitri alive was by staying put and defending against the chasers. Once a taproot is harvested, the heroes can meet up with him, and if he goes down, it isn't too big of a deal because the AI actually takes control of his cart and brings it to a surprisingly convenient location. After the heroes withstand a small nuclear explosion, it's time for the customary big-time defense mission, and wow, Retold made this one a doozy. All Is Not Lost is a mission with 3 phases. First, there's 10 minutes to construct defenses, then 20 minutes of holdout, followed by an execution. But in reality, there's 10 minutes of panic, followed by 20 minutes of abject chaos. In my opinion, this is the hardest mission that Retold has to offer, and I feel like I need more time to have a concrete understanding of everything about it. But I did beat it, so at least I can tell you how I managed. It's incredibly important to quickly grab both settlements at the beginning of the mission, and then start aggressively making workers. I had to be maxed out at 200 population when the fighting began, and I still lost over 100 population of units in the first 90 seconds of combat. Walls across all 3 points are required, double wall if you can, and get lots of ranged units to sit behind them. I was incredibly impressed with the new ranged anti-myth unit, the Goatee. Combining them with throwing axemen helped me with the titanic triple prong attack you're hit with at the beginning. Because there's so many enemies, your favor will absolutely skyrocket when the fighting begins. And because there are so many densely packed enemies, I cannot imagine a world without fire giants. Their area damage is absolutely incredible as an alpha strike against the waves. Once the first tidal wave of enemies is cleaned up, the attacks are more focused. They send only one group at a time, but they seem like they strike every 20 to 30 seconds. They also eventually do a raid from behind, but it's ranged units, so your forge can tank it for a long time with no problems. Eventually, hitting a maxed out army of fire giants and upgraded Goatee seems to be the key to quickly finishing off groups of enemies before the next one arrives. Then it's just a game of persistence. If you can last 20 minutes without any major mistakes, Odysseus' army will arrive. Then a quick Ragnarok and all-in attack towards the north is enough to break the enemy forces, but honestly, this mission is just hard. Focus on having a clean opener where you can be at 200 food with some upgrades when the fighting begins, and then work from there. Good luck, soldier. If you can do this, you can do anything. It's time to return to Atlantis. Welcome back. After making landfall and establishing a base, we have to rescue 15 villagers. There are a couple ways to do this depending on how you're feeling. The first is the traditional big macro game. The center of the map is filled with one of the strongest defensive enemies in the game. If you're in the mood to throw massive armies at each other, this is the way. But once again, Retold's reusable powers opens up some interesting avenues, namely stealth gameplay. Using the Pegasus for vision, the Underworld Passage power can now repeatedly get your forces straight into the prisons for rescues, blast the guards away, and then make a quick escape. Both of these styles are completely viable here, though the sneaky strategy is significantly faster. We've reached a place in my dreams, the final mission of the War of the Trident. The objective is to build a wonder, which takes 5,000 food, wood, and gold, as well as a ludicrous amount of production time. To afford that, there's a second base on the opposite side of Amonra that is flush with resources. I highly recommend grabbing this ASAP and then never bothering to defend it. The biggest threat in the mission are the incoming enemy attacks. Not the ones targeted at you, but your Norse ally. He will fall with very little fanfare if you're not paying close attention to the minimap. He cannot hold the attacks that hit him alone, and he will not ask for help. Both allies will provide you with a lot of units throughout the mission, but the one that matters the most is the Son of Osiris. His chain lightning massacres myth units and helps you stabilize. Keep him alive at all costs. There are a series of plenty vaults around the map, but I honestly have a hard time getting to them. The mission does a solid job of making you feel fairly pinned, particularly if the Norse force has taken some damage. If you can find the time, the vault to the northeast of your starting position is great to have, but there is another option. Just make your own. With repeatable god powers, you can source plenty vaults straight from Hephaestus. The wonder itself takes as many workers as possible to pop up. It takes a single worker a casual 90 minutes to build one, so bring some friends. But once it's done, so is Gargarensis. Arcantos Prime is the destroyer of worlds and can crush every remaining unit with ease. Oh, and for the meteor bonus objective, it's not super important honestly, but it is a load of fun, so if you can get around to finding some temples, it is absolutely worth the time. The Golden Gift was a short mini-campaign that was given to players for free while they were waiting for the Titans expansion to come out. Because of this, it only has 4 missions, and they're not as developed as normal campaign missions, so we're going to be able to blitz through this. We start off with Brokk's Journey. This is more of an RPG mission than anything else. It sets the stage for the fact that this is a Norse campaign, but we're playing as the dwarves. So you're not going to be making any normal villagers here. As a result, throughout this campaign, it is pretty decent to just rely on lumber and gold instead of doing a lot of food-heavy stuff. What I'm saying is, you see these cows over here? Don't eat them. You'll thank me later. Eventually, you're going to find an event, and then after you finish it, you have the ability to take an underworld passage right to the end of the mission. Originally, you were supposed to bring 4 ox carts with you, however, they just kind of forgot that Brokk has the ability to build them in Retold, which means, well, escorting is significantly easier than it should be. Eitri's Journey is one of the most undercooked missions in this entire game. The goal is to get Eitri and a couple of dwarves across the map as a naval battle rages. However, all you need to do this is 3 krakens and 4 longboats, which you can basically afford right from the beginning. You don't even need transport because longboats can do that. So just get those krakens and longboats and then sail straight up the center, drop on the peninsula past the krakens, wait out this fight, and you're done. Even as a kid, I was very confused about how easy this mission is. But on the off chance that you do want to take this opportunity to do some big naval warfare, the longboat has a ridiculous multiplier on its favor generation. So if you get a lot of those, you are not going to be kraken lacking. The fight at the Forge is a big open macro mission that takes place in 2 stages. First, you have to go take the Forge from Eitri, and then you have to hold it for 18 minutes. It can be tempting to try to rush the Plenty Vault very quickly, however, I do not recommend it. As soon as you do, large attack waves are going to start, and you don't want to deal with those early on. You can swing in and destroy the defenders at the very last moment, it is not a problem. Not rushing is important because if Eitri takes the Plenty Vault for even a picosecond, the entire timer resets and it makes your life miserable. There aren't a whole lot of resources in your starting base, meaning your forces are gonna have to go outside in order to harvest. Defending them from attacks is very difficult while you're trying to deal with the Forge unless you have some type of mobility. I think the Jarl is a fantastic unit here for that reason. Also, under Loki, your Hearseer have a chance on hit to summon myth units, and it is crazy strong. In order to afford these food-heavy myth units, you can do the bonus objective to destroy the docks and gain control of Eitri's fishing boats. But you need to build your own dock, otherwise the captured boats are not going to have anywhere to return the food to, and they're just a waste of supply. As long as you make sure your harvesters are safe and the center is secure, you're going to have an easy time. And the final Golden Gift mission is Loki's Temples, which I believe is the only mission in any of these campaigns that is named after the bonus objective. This mission's pretty straightforward. The main enemy is fairly passive, they'll send occasional big waves followed by a long time that you can explore. The remaining enemy attacks come from those Loki temples on the map. Fortunately for us, Loki loves good urban planning, so if you just follow the roads, you're gonna find the temples. And once the temples are cleaned up, it can be tempting to run past Loki's main base towards the boar objective, but tree walls and needhogs mean that you probably want to take it slow and steady, otherwise you're gonna get roasted. With the Golden Gift done, we move on to the Titans expansion, the new Atlantis campaign, featuring Castor, Arcantos' bloodthirsty son. We're going to be playing mostly as the Atlanteans, with a smattering of the other 3 factions as well. But before we get into this one, it is worth mentioning that when I recorded this campaign, it was significantly easier than Fall of the Trident. If you were doing moderate difficulty on the first campaign, it might be worth popping it up to hard here for a similar experience. A Lost People is the first mission, and it starts a bit faster than some of the other faction introductions. Atlantean villagers cost more population and take significantly more time and resources to build compared to their counterparts. The The comparison isn't perfect, but you can consider one Atlantean worker about equal to 2 normal workers. On this mission, the enemy comes in from a variety of angles and very quickly. Early walls are important, and Argus archers firing behind them is great. Once your fortifications are set up, now you can macro pretty easily. The enemy attacks are not that difficult, and once you're ready to move out, the first base is in the center of the map, another outpost is in the top left, and then when both of them are down, you can move to the objective in the top right. As long as you deal with the attacking outposts before sieging the fort, you should be fine. Atlantis Reborn is where we start to get more access to the faction, including a few mechanics that will take some relearning. Atlantean human units can all be promoted to heroes for a cost. They get a small buff to combat strength and a massive bonus against myth units. It is very tempting to want to promote a lot of units to heroes because it seems very cool, but the benefit that they get against non-myth units is negligible, so be careful about spending too many resources early. Oh, and you watched the intro video that told you how to play Atlantis, right? Because Atlantean favor generation has been completely revamped from the original game. Now instead of being based on how many settlements you have, it's how many oracles you have far away from each other. Each isolated oracle generates more favor. It can be tough to keep oracles separate and alive in a world where the enemy starts with the majority of the map under their control, but when you can do it, it is worth the effort. Also, never promote villagers into heroes. In addition to being very expensive, they cost 1 more population when promoted, but only harvest resources 10% faster. It's more efficient to just build a couple extra. For the mission itself, there isn't a whole lot to say, for the first half. By this point, you should be very comfortable building up and destroying the first military academies. If not, I'm not sure how you got here. Most armies of mixed units should be able to do it, but I will caution that the catapeltes and terma units from the counter barracks are a little bit too niche in their role to be frequently used in the campaign. When breaching into the main base is when the mission gets hard. The initial resistance is very stiff, and if you cannot win with a decisive blow, they will rebuild quite quickly with a mass of production structures on the right side. If you need to pull back and regroup, don't expect a worn down opponent the second time in. You want to strike with the biggest force you can muster. Now that Castor and his boys have gotten a new island home, they decide it's as good a time as ever to invade Greece. Greetings from Greece is a weird but cool mission. There are a number of plenty vaults around the map, as well as a decent number of little events that can play out that give you benefits. This is another mission where losing villagers can be really rough, so try to keep them back and safe. Using your army to wander around and check every corner of the map is totally worth it here. The enemy attacks are fairly light and infrequent to encourage exploration, but as a rule of thumb, you should be able to defend an attack, go explore one specific place, and then return back to defend whatever comes next. Getting a smooth rotation of this keeps you very safe. The enemy attacks will stop to try to claim plenty vaults from you, making it significantly safer for your workers and production if you have the vaults. And the infinite money that they give you is a nice little benefit too. Once you've explored the map and you're maxed out, General Melagius will not be a threat. Odin's Tower is an interesting mission. There are 3 unconnected valleys that you must use the Vortex power and Chronos time shift to move between. Each valley houses an enemy base and temple that must be destroyed and replaced with your own. Well, that's how the mission used to be. Retold decided that things were going to be shaken up a bit. And if my tone isn't a good indicator, I'm not a big fan. After being hit by the first big Norse attack, the path opens up to the first valley. You have access to the Destroyer, a melee infantry siege unit which is a solid tank and a building buster. You want to have a nice varied composition here with decent melee, myth, and ranged units, but one unit stands out here as getting a big power up in Retold, the Chariot Ballista. These bad boys are area damage anti-infantry artillery, but unlike the original game, they can be promoted to heroes. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest anti-myth unit tool in any faction. From now on, at any time that you can fold a few of these guys into your army, do it. They are incredible. A mixed force, including the new Ballista boys, should be enough to clear out the first valley, destroy its temple, and what's this? Turns out that the multiple valleys have been unmultiplied, and now the first and second valley are connected, meaning that you just continue down the warpath unimpeded. And once that's done, you finally need to vortex to the final area, but at that point your forces are so overwhelming it doesn't matter. This mission became very easy because somebody just didn't understand the original point. Moving around your structures with time shift was cool, and it's sad to see it go. But I guess it does make my job easier because I don't have to give you many tips on a mission that's really easy. The Atlanteans reaching Egypt gives us the ancient Relics, a very unique mission that can be a bit intimidating but isn't that bad. The Temple of Kronos must survive and will be subject to the majority of attacks, but it isn't where you want the majority of your base to be. Across the river to the top left is a bountiful harvest of resources that should serve as the main fuel to your macro engine. Get some walls on the right hand side, and after about 10 minutes grab a couple towers there too to keep the area on lockdown. Having no god powers at the beginning can be pretty rough, but the automaton myth unit can help you stabilize. These guys are real tanky, repair each other in combat, and can even rebuild fallen brothers. They were a bit finicky in the original game, but they work really well here. Toss a variety of archers behind them, and you're gonna have a good time. In theory, there are multiple ways that you can approach this mission, but in reality, the West and South Relic have the best powers and the worst defenders. I highly recommend going South first for that juicy tornado power. Unfortunately, these are all single use and cannot be recast for favor. Once you do start knocking areas down, they'll start to fall like dominoes to your god power supplemented army. Mount Olympus is one of the most memorable and fun missions in Age of Mythology, but it's also a mission where there aren't really any wrong answers. Turning your humans into various myth units lets you be very flexible with what composition you want to make in your own style, and it's almost always going to be correct. But I will leave you with one little tip. Any non-hero unit you control can be turned into a myth unit, so be creative about what you might consider a non-hero unit. After what I think is one of the most memorable and fun no-build missions in RTS comes the Betrayal at Sikyos, which is... This mission sucks. Make priests only, a son of Osiris is good too. I was really hoping that this mission would get a design pass to make it a little bit more interesting and Retold. Previously they only attacked with Prometheans, and it was incredibly boring because priests countered them. But now, the enemy also attacks with a couple of satyrs who are also countered by the priest. Cool. The mission is just wave after wave of the same units until the 3-minute mark, at which point Prometheus himself attacks. And as of recording this, Prometheus's AI is just broken. He just whiffs about 80% of his attacks with an animation cancel, and because of this, I accidentally killed him. But I'm going to assume that this works in the full release, and you want to either have series of walls or just run away from him. He's very slow, so you can kite. You don't have to win the fight against him, just survive. Cerberus is mechanically a lot like the previous mission, but done actually right. A lot of its difficulty comes from being hit in a large number of locations, so be careful about that. The mission starts off with a warning about a lack of gold and how we need trading caravans. There are 6 in total that can be found around the map, and they can be found here, 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 and of course, here. Get these really quick, toss them behind some walls, strongholds with some priests, and you should be safe against everything but the most dedicated attacks. The caravans cannot be rebuilt, so being quick to capture them and keeping them safe is non-negotiable. Also, this isn't a mission-specific thing, but I've noticed that occasionally the game does not give me a fully blacked out Tug of War when I'm playing. As you can see on this mission, I just have perfect vision of where all the relics are. I have no idea if this is intentional, but if it is, then go grab the relics, you know exactly where they are. The enemy hits fast and hard here. Priests are fantastic, but gold being an eternal issue means they aren't always available. Same goes for lots of walls and towers. Scorpion Men and Avenger myth units are ideal here because they can brawl with enemy attacks and they only cost food, which you're gonna have an abundance of. And I don't think that it matters if you have the Meteor or Tornado as your god power on tier 4, but save it. Because Retold added the stupidest attack I have ever seen, where they just vortex a giant army right on top of your son of Osiris. And if you don't know it's coming and aren't in position, you just instantly lose. So just nuke these guys with your ultimate ability for having the audacity to try this. Once you have everything walled off and your army in a good place, the mission won't be too hard. But be aware that Cerberus attacks on a timer, so the more that you use the Son of Osiris, the longer you're gonna have to throw people into the meat grinder in order to hold him off. And this Titan is not going down to normal units. Following the theme of country-specific Titan fighting comes Rampage, where the Norse Titan is. As of me playing this mission, it is completely and utterly broken. What's supposed to happen is that over 25 minutes, the Norse Titan and his forces fight through a series of towns. You must use full stag to freeze the Titan and slow him down while dealing with enemy attacks, and if you do it right, they'll arrive at the final town with about a minute left. You have to hold them off just a bit, and then the Needhog comes and saves the day. But here, for some reason, the Ice Titan has no chill. So instead of 25 minutes, you have 12, which means you're not getting any dragons today. But I'm not letting this big guy ruin my tips video, so here's a fairly easy to execute strategy that I came up with to beat this mission until things get fixed. First, head to the right and south and grab 2 relics. One gives infantry bonus damage against titans, which is going to be useful. Then start building masses of village centers and constantly make workers. Lots and lots of workers. Use your starting forces defensively and the healing spring to stay alive, with full stag occasionally going and freezing the titan. To easily freeze, you can hold shift, right click the titan, and then right click away. With these queued commands, full stag will walk right up to him, throw his freezing breath, and walk away. With your massive income from having 1 billion villagers, you can get to the 4th age, grab the Ragnarok power, and once the titan reaches the final village, you should be at around 100 workers, and you can create a monster army of anti-titan, anti-mythological hero infantry and zerg that bad boy down. This should be patched. I cannot imagine that it's intentional that you get half the time of the original game on less than Titan difficulty, but this strategy does work with 12 minutes, so it is sure as heck gonna work when you have 25. From here on out, we're not going to have any more massive macro missions. Instead, the finale is a series of 3 focused scenarios to cap off the Atlantean campaign. First up is defeating Prometheus for real on making amends. This mission is a little bit misleading. It seems like at a glance the main foe is Prometheus himself, but in reality it is the base to the northeast. Gaia's force power has 4 charges before it starts taking favor to use. In addition to making trees that are just better than normal, you can use it to help edit the map in your favor. The wall gaps to your southeast are perfect targets for some natural reclamation. This won't stop Prometheus's forces from attacking you, but it will send them down the same path that the human forces take, making defense easier. Having a narrow causeway where all the enemies come down also makes the spider layer power fantastic to spam. The mission will be effectively over once a nearby base is down, but it is moderately well defended. This is a good time to try out the new Fanatic unit, who deals huge damage to everything in melee. And whoa, I am so in love with the new art on Implosion. It was already one of the coolest powers in the game, but this is absolutely sick. 11 out of 10 would implode again. Excuse me. Once you have a death army, steamroll the base and then follow Prometheus around, building 2 town centers right behind him. With 4 Lush activated, he will drop in seconds. The penultimate mission is Atlantis Betrayed, a limited building mission where heroes scramble to defend various areas of the city from automatons. For the most part on this mission, as long as you go with the flow, you're fine, but when you unlock your first set of villagers, make sure to build some fishing boats. You're not allowed to build extra villagers themselves, but getting some extra fish really takes the edge off of micromanaging your economy here. Once the northern area of the map is secure, you'll have the ability to make the Destroyer Siege unit. The final threat on top of the hill consists of a ton of myth units inside of a series of fortifications, meaning that hero-promoted destroyers go full Giga Chad here and absolutely annihilate everything. And the final mission is A Place in My Dreams. This is an interesting finale. Once again, there's no town centers, and instead you must utilize Atlantean harvesting to get resources, build up, and defend 4 positions simultaneously as Gaia grows. For the most part, your composition here isn't a big deal. As long as you're not going out of your way to do silly stuff, a mixed bag of units will do the trick. Just make sure to get your hero promotions. The hardest bit is being in position to deal with the attacks. They all come from the center of the map, and they can hit from any direction, making it easy to be caught off guard. The best way to deal with this is to split your army into 2, one part in the north and one part in the south. If the northern army camps near the northern gate, they will passively defend whatever comes out of it. And because not that much is going on, you can use your vision of the center to watch the enemy army until they leave one of their positions. And then you can move your southern force to intercept. At 5 minutes remaining, Kronos himself will spawn and head towards the control points. If you have all 4 alive, you are sitting pretty. But if you've lost a few, you're gonna need to distract him for time. Kronos deals some pretty massive area damage, but if you can get him hitting single targets at a time, he's not exceptionally fast at eliminating them. But as long as you can hold on with a bare minimum amount remaining, the game is yours once Gaia has spawned. She is overwhelmingly powerful. But if the army splitting thing is too difficult, I did find another strategy that won the game in about 5 minutes, even on Titan difficulty. Quickly send 2 cavalry to spend your seeds so that it's replaced with the implosion power, and then grab 3 behemoths and a bunch of Charioballista. Slam them into the bottom of the enemy base, and bam! It has defenses, but it's no fortress. A well-placed implosion and behemoths eating their towers and walls makes it pretty easy to clean them out. Kronos will still spawn, but you can either just let him do his thing and he'll be too slow, or you can distract him with what you have. His escort of myth units infinitely respawn, but this is just visual proof of what I said earlier about how absolutely insane Charyobalista are. This group killed upwards of 1,000 population of myths in only a few minutes. So if you're feeling cheeky, this is how you style on the Titan Kronos. And with that, you have officially beaten every single campaign mission in Age of Mythology. Good game, well played, and I will see you on Titan difficulty. Peace!